Hey, listeners. Welcome to a Bookish Podcast. I'm your host, Megan, and this podcast is all about books, the people who write them, and their favorite desserts. My goal, if you will, is to help fellow readers diversify their bookshelves by sharing my diverse reads from authors who I feel have been underrepresented in the publishing industry. So grab a serving or two of your favorite dessert and let's get literary. This week, I sat down with Melissa Ferguson to talk about Famous for a Living, books, and so much more. I was really excited for this book to come out. It sounded like a fun read, and it really was. A country mouse meets city mouse story for a new generation, and starring humans, not mice. She's insta-famous. He uses a flip phone. A scandal causes her to fall from her penthouse perch and escape to Montana, where she ends up working with her uncle. Written with her signature wit and charm, this is an opposites attract romance that will have you both laughing and crying. In the good way, of course. Listeners, please join me in welcoming the author full of humor and heart, Melissa Ferguson. Famous for a Living is 2 months old now, so congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
Have you been enjoying the time now that it's been out?
Yeah, it's really kind of a funny world I'm learning where it's just by the time your book comes out, you've spent a year. I mean, I just, like we just talked about how to plot a payback. Well, that's everything I'm thinking about right now. That's even the cover reveal. That's like, a year of talking about that or thinking about that or doing marketing or publicity or whatever for it. So by the time that it actually comes out, I'm actually working on a different book and a different book. And so my mind tends to be elsewhere. So I'm kind of like, oh, I feel like it's been out for a year and a half. I feel like it's an old book now. But yeah, it's just a little baby book. It's been going well. It's been fun. It's just kind of bizarre. The more books you have stacked on one another, the more like Harper just threw a promotion that was like a really exciting thing for Thomas Nelson and the marketing team when they called me, and they were like, heads up, the flagship, I don't even know all these words, but they were like, the flagship, Harper flagship is picked it for a Book Your Summer Escape, and it's going to be promoted here, and it's going to be really great. And it was like for Meet Me in the Margins, which came out, it's multiple books before. And so then it's just funny how they all kind of get jumbled.
Right? And they kind of all just kind of work together after a while.
Yeah, which is awesome. So
right?
I do love that aspect, because it's really fun when a reader will be like, oh, I like this book, and then I went and read all of your books this week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and I get it. I mean, I did that with Sophie Kinsella, so
right.
But I just never thought that, like, oh, someone would do that about my books, or that my books have a certain flavor. And I didn't think about that like, if you like a book, you like that flavor and you want to stick with it. So, don't suddenly write a thriller and kill everyone off at the end, or whatever. That's not your thing.
Right. I totally agree with that. I'm actually super guilty. I read Famous for a Living, and then I went and added every other book to my want to reads and to my Amazon wish list. I was definitely that person.
See, and I'm like a terrible person and my publisher says not to do it. They're like, stop doing this, because I'll be like, don't read The Dating Charade or The Cul-de-Sac War. Read Meet Me in the Margins or After. And they're like, stop saying that. Your others were good too. But they also tell me every time I write a book that I get stronger, which makes sense. If you're a writer, like, you should know a bit more every time you write a book. That would be the goal. But yeah, so here I am. I'm going to say read Meet Me in the Margins next.
I love it. Okay. So for Famous for a Living, how did the character of Cat come to be?
Famous for a Living, Cat. Okay, well, it's funny. I'm like literally looking at all my books being like, oh, right, Cat. Well, for her, it came because I had to start doing social media. I opened an Instagram account and then a TikTok account after being at a writers conference where publishers and editors and agents would say, listen, essentially, we can't work with anyone who doesn't have a presence, and a good one, preferably, like, get as strong as you can. Because this is a new world of publishing books, and there's an incredible amount of competition. There are millions of books that come out every year, including all the millions of books that have come out every year previously. And so it's an incredibly saturated market, and you got to kind of like, as much as the publisher will put forth efforts, you got to put as much or more effort into it as well. So I was like, man, and I really struggled to create a social media account. Thankfully, it kind of worked out after a lot of hard work. It worked out after a couple years, and now I'm at like 700,000 followers with this kind of account about surrounding, like, my life, my farmhouse kind of life, and slow living, and making bread, and my children, and gardening, and whatever. And in that experience, which has been a very mixed bag of experiences, like it's definitely not all bad, and it's definitely not all good. There were some interesting things that came to light from especially relationships with other people who were maybe like full-time influencers, who just, it's a wild world. It's a really wild, wild west world. And there's a lot of anxiety for them if their entire job is riding on it, because they can be really canceled overnight by saying the wrong thing, or accident, or even what's perceived to be the wrong thing. Or the algorithm shifts, or their account accidentally gets deleted for X, Y, or Z reasons, or gets hacked. I mean, it's just like, I can't imagine any other job in the world that has that much pressure riding on them, that's out of their control. Yeah, and it's extremely stressful. And everyone looks, who's not into social media, everyone can look at some boppy little person and think, oh, their life is so easy. But there's really a lot going on behind the scenes, which I think explains a lot of the anxiety they face. So, yeah. So anyways, all that's to say is, but there's also some crazy pros. Like, I think it is an incredibly crazy world. I was telling my husband the other day, I have a manager now for my brands, and honestly, if there is a product, I'm getting paid now to promote products that I would want to buy normally. And or if there's something I want, like last week I was like, oh, I want some wallpaper on my walls for my toy room. And all I have to do is ask now, Rifle Paper, and say, hi, can I have some? I mean, and they may or may not pay me for an official campaign, but at the very least, they tend to be like, yeah, how much do you want? And I'm like, that is really weird. That is a really weird thing you have to also think through as a, I don't know. And it's just a completely different world than I ever thought I would ever stumble into. And so with that, I was like, oh, wouldn't that be interesting if there was this person who, I especially saw some of these girls who, there was one girl in particular I saw on social media, which she's not new, but it's like she grows to fame, millions of followers from like literally 10 seconds of popping bubble gum, in the corner of her room at night. And I wondered what would happen to her long term if she did this for 15 years and all of a sudden she's 30 one day and not quite, she's aging. She's no longer 15 or 18, and she has no real experience. She's never maybe gone to college. She's never really done anything outside social media. And what if something went terribly wrong social media wise for her, brand wise, and she had to be out of it? What would she do? And basically, what lessons would she learn, and work through along the way, along with the social media things that she struggles with. And so that's kind of why that's where Kat came from. And I think it's interesting getting the feedback on the way people think about her, because it is so varied. Some people really like her and they say, oh, she's like a nice person who happened to be an influencer and things went poorly for it. And some people come and they're like, wow, she is so stuck up, and from the beginning they'll be like, she is so incredibly shallow. And I think that's been the most interesting review I've ever gotten from any of my books, is just half the people think they're dead set on thinking she's a great kind of giving personality, and half are dead set in the beginning thinking she's just pure shallow. And it's so different. But anyways, so that's how she came to be. That's a long-winded way.
I love that, though. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably enjoy reading. So tell me, do you want to indulge in unlimited ebooks and audiobooks for less? Try Kobo Plus today. I use Kobo Plus Read, but there are 2 other subscription options available for you audiobook lovers. Each plan comes with a 30-day free trial for new subscribers and gives you access to over 1.3 million ebooks and over 10,000 audiobooks. It's perfect for those of us who find joy in a growing library. You can read on any Kobo e-reader or with the Kobo app, and you can listen with the Kobo app or on select Kobo e-readers. Find links in the episode description to get started on your free trial, or send me a message to find out more. It's so interesting that there's been such polar opposite reactions to her.
Yeah, I you know what I've decided that I think it's, reading is subjective, but I really think it comes from the reader's point of view on who those people are in real life.
Oh, for sure, especially their views on social media influencers as they're on the platforms themselves.
Yes, definitely. And so, and even the people who think, wow, she was really shallow at first, they tend to say, oh, I love how she grew. Oh, how I love how she grew when she grew to Montana and blah, 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 blah. And it worked out. And I'm glad to see that. But I think it's really interesting because I did not write her to be necessarily crazy. I did not think that she was incredibly shallow. Or like a terrible person in the beginning. I think she was genuinely like, she never openly, purposefully did actions to harm others in the beginning, ever, or throughout the story. So I thought that was really interesting, being like, what does this say about human nature and the way it's very easy for us to judge others, maybe without knowing the full story of like what's going on.
Yes. So did you do any research for the book, and what did that look like? Just, was it your personal journey, or did you go outside of that?
Yeah, let me think. I always do a lot of research on the book. Well, and so I really wanted to go to Glacier National Park with my family, but it was very expensive, and I couldn't get my husband on board to like drag 4 kids and all of us on a plane to get to Glacier. And so I was like, fine, I'll write about it and do all my research, and I'll imagine all these beautiful mountains.
Right.
And yeah, so that's kind of how I lived. And I so I did a lot of research of Glacier National Park. I created a pretend national park, a competing national park next to it. And I'm trying to think what else I would do research. There's research involved in everything. I had to research a park ranger's life and what the dangers of their life, or what is included in their job descriptions and things like that, for sure. And then I definitely had to do some research. Some of my research just included on her side, just with her job, maybe my own personal experience, or what friends who have had much, much larger followings have said regarding their experiences. I do research, over all my books about, any matter of things, but those are the main points with this book.
So is there anything you edited out of the book?
Oh, wow. Like particular, I'm trying to think. I edit a lot out just in general. I think Stephen King had like a quote. He has the kill your darlings, like about killing off your words as much as you love them for the sake of the story. And it's always true. It is so painful cutting words and cutting lines, but I don't think I had anything specifically, like any larger things that were cut out of this one.
That's awesome, though. So you really got to have like all of it come to fruition.
Yeah. And that's kind of been, the only time that I can think of that I really had to cut was in the Cul-de-Sac War, my second book. There was a character that I loved, and I had to cut him because my editor said he was creepy.
Oh, no. You're
So,
like, no, my favorite.
I know. Well, so then I used that experience in my next book, Meet Me in the Margins, which is about the publishing world, and there's an editor and writer, and I definitely had that like exact scenario where she said the quote of whatever my editor did, and I put it in there as the editor saying. And so I got retribution in my next book and said, "Wahaha, like I'm going to put this in."
I love that. And it totally leads me to my next question. Did you hide any secrets in your book that only a few people would find?
Oh yeah, the Easter eggers. Or Easter eggs, they call them, I guess. I always have a few, but they're not it's just I'm trying to think if there's anything specific off the top of my head for Famous for a Living. It's all just things that if people follow me on social media, they'll know that I've experienced with X, Y, or Z. You know, like if a chicken chases me, one of my chickens, for example, and something happens on a day, then I might write that in my story, and certain people might know that I'm alluding to that experience or whatever.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's fun.
So how do you find that publishing your first book changed your writing process?
Oh my goodness, it completely changes your writing process. I mean, my very first book, my very, very first book that I wrote that is still not published. Actually, my first two books that I wrote are not published. My first book, though, took 4 years to write. And now I write under a deadline of, I've got like 9 months between books to get it done. And that's in addition to all the editing for whatever the other book is, in addition to all the publicity and preparing and a third book that is now out and sharing and talking about that. So it is, the writing process is, I had to learn real quick how to speed up. And, there's no, for me, there's just no room for the idea of writer's block. I mean, there are definitely days where writing is hard, but I have to throw words on a page and sort it out. Just like, I think of it like, just like a lawyer has to go to work, whether he feels it or like it or not that day, and I mean, I have to too. So thankfully I haven't run into massive problems there. And just in general, there are rules in commercial fiction that I wasn't aware of before I wrote my first book. And so, for example, in the very first chapter, you tend to have to start off with a bang. You have to especially in a contemporary romance or a rom-com, you have to introduce the characters kind of thing. You don't have to, but in general, that's the way, readers want to see them. And they're a lot, and they kind of want to get an idea of the problem and kind of get an idea of what's going on. So you got to, for me, I had to learn, I have to go quicker than I thought, than I may want to normally. I have to jump and get right to it. And so, so I'm constantly reviewing reviews from people who read my books and just kind of seeing if there's a collective, if there's a thread that is consistent, I'll kind of keep that in mind and talk with my editor about it. Oh, well, people seem to like this and I like this, and maybe I'll put more of this in my next book.
Beginning over 60 years ago with one mother's dream, Linen Chest has remained a family-owned, proudly Canadian business with over 35 locations across Canada. You'll find an amazing selection of quality products because we all value quality and having something no one else does. Shop for everything from bedding to home decor to dinnerware. Paired with excellent customer service, my personal favorite is the price guarantee. Linen Chest stands by their in-store and online pricing for a full year. So if you find the same item at a lower price anywhere else within 365 days of your purchase, not only will they match it, but they give you an extra 10% off the difference, no questions asked. Don't miss the back-to-school promo on now until September 7th. You can save up to $120 on select Nespresso capsule machines and receive a $20 coffee credit. The Linen Chest Pays the Taxes event is on now until August 20th. You can save the equivalent of taxes on most items. Last, but certainly not least, is the online exclusive sale on until September 30th. you can save up to 75% off the regular price of select items. As always, the links for all of these offers can be found in the episode description. Are you friends with any other authors? And if so, how do you find they help you become a better writer?
Oh my goodness, 100%. Like some of my favorite people are writers because we're collectively in this very weird world, and it's a very stressful world. It's just volatile. The publishing industry has ups and downs and things, much like in Famous for a Living, there are things out of your control that can happen. And a book can perform well, and that may not be in your control, or it cannot perform well and sell well, and that affects you. And there's a lot going on there, like things I never would have thought about. Is it an election year? Apparently that really matters. Is your book coming out the same time as Britney Spears just said that she was putting out a book? Is it coming out right then? That might affect your sales, and all this stuff. And there's just so much to it. So I find a lot of encouragement from my writer friends, and I have several friends that we've seen each other. We've been to conferences together. Some of us talk. I was messaging with one author friend right before I got on the phone with you. And so yeah, I love Rachel Linden's one of my dear friends. I really like Susan Meissner. I really like Marie Bostwick. I love Catherine Ray, Betsy St. Amant. There are just several people who have been really kind and really helpful along my publishing journey. And then there's others, like I really like Annabelle Monaghan. We've been messaging, and she's the one who wrote Nora Goes Off Script. I really like her books, and I feel like she's been an encouragement. It's just a general encouragement toward one another. That's what it is. Like you can do it kind of feel, supporting one another as your books are coming out and things like that.
I love that. Supportive circles are my favorite.
Yeah, me too.
So what was an early experience where you learned that language had power?
Well, specifically, I went to seminary and I got a master's degree in biblical studies, and there was this interesting class that was on theodicy, which is basically the question of which is a hard question. How can a good God exist in a world of suffering? And taking into light some of the hardest things that exist. And I remember talking with my friend about the interesting things I was learning in this philosophy class, and all the different theories and that have come across history. And she was like, "Wow, I'm so interested in that." And I was like, "Yeah, these are these really interesting textbooks that I have been reading. You should look at them." And then she was like, "Yeah, great." And then in a couple weeks, I now have a baby literally sitting on my lap. She just crawled on me. Let me know if I need to pause. But
Oh no, you're totally okay.
Okay.
We have a guest star.
I know, for real. Yeah, but a couple weeks later, I was talking to her on the phone. I was like, "Oh, did you read those books?" And she was like, "Yeah, I read Hunger Games." And I was like, "Well, okay." And I get it. I listened to the Hunger Games while training for a marathon, and it's very amazing. And she was like, it sounded fun-ish to think through those things, but like the Hunger Games was a captivating story, and there are meaningful messages in the Hunger Games too. And I was like, well, that is actually quite true. And I could see how the power of the Hunger Games. Well, let's see, it was then like 24 hours later, I guess. It was shortly after that I ended up getting hooked on Twilight. Twilight had just come out. Yeah. And I first saw like 10 minutes on television, and I was like so intrigued by the plot that I ended up like reading the whole series in like 2 weeks.
That's impressive.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was fun. And then essentially I went out to I went out to the grocery store shortly after, and there was someone who had actually gotten like a Twilight tattoo on their neck. And that was the moment where I was like, I mean, I don't think that's the wisest choice to make a permanent decision like that. However, what a powerful testament to the power of words and the power of story that
So true.
this author had literally changed this person's life, and this person had felt like whatever the message was in that story was so strong that she was willing to like go do that. And also this author had like really reached an entire world with her story and whatever the plot points were and the messages and the themes in that story. And that's when I really thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I were able, like, I wonder if I could write a story that had meaningful messages, meaningful themes, things that I believed in, like that I felt like made the world a bit of a better, happier place, brought a little light. And there's a lot of hard things that happen in this world, and that just was like a happy moment, a things where things happily end, and loyalty or integrity wins the day. The good guy gets the girl, like the things that we longed for. And then I started writing and really haven't stopped since. That was the moment I realized the power of story.
That's a beautiful story. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
That's the story of how seminary went to Twilight, went to a vampire tattoo, went to writing. It's a very convoluted story, but
it's okay. The seminary part actually leads me into my next question. You're really awesome at that, setting me up for my question.
Oh.
So I was going to say, you have a master's of biblical studies, and do you still teach courses at King University?
No, I had for a little bit, and then I was mostly ended up doing online, and then I could not. There was a time where I had twins and I was teaching in person and would run out and be like, now we're having a break. It was like 6 to 10 p.m. Now we're going to have a break, and I'm going to go and like nurse my twins that my husband brought in the car and then run back and teach. And I was like, this is too chaotic of a life. And honestly, my writing is taking off. I really don't have the free ability to really juggle all the balls. So no, all that to say is no, I don't do that anymore.
Well, do you find that your experience with that really inspires your writing?
That's a good question. I've never thought about that before. I don't think so. I don't think it was I think my worldview has been shifted by all my experiences, or kind of created, and I write from my worldview, from all my life experiences. But before that, I taught ESL to adult immigrants from all over the world, and I would say that was more fundamental in what I write now, and affecting my writing. So no, probably not.
I received the Kobo Libra 2 as a gift from my mom, and it totally changed my reading game. I was getting migraines from too much screen time and needed a solution. The 7-inch HDE ink-carded touchscreen is always glare-free, and Comfort Light Pro's adjustable brightness and blue light reduction tech limits eye strain. It helped enable me to read more by not aggravating my cluster headaches. Score! That isn't even the best part, though. It's fully waterproof, so you can read in the bath or at the beach with ease. It has buttons for when you don't feel like tapping, and you can read in landscape mode or listen to audiobooks. It even holds up to 24,000 ebooks, 150 Kobo audiobooks, or a combination of both. Find links in the episode description to purchase a Kobo of your very own, or send me a message to find out more. Just to hop back to one thing that we've been talking about a little bit on the episode is that you've got a new book called How to Plot a Payback coming out in April next year. So what can us readers expect from this one, if there's anything you can tell us?
Oh gosh. Yeah,
without getting in trouble.
Oh, I won't get in trouble. No. It'll let me think. with this one, I thought it would be a lot of my books start with thinking, oh gosh, wouldn't it be fun if? And I had never seen it done before. And so that's what I did. I thought, wouldn't it be funny or fun if a guy who is a writer for a sitcom, essentially your friend's sitcom, or the Big Bang Theory kind of sitcom, wouldn't it be funny if the writer for that plot a payback for maybe wrongs done him, because he's writing her on set, and like, wouldn't that be so funny? And what I do like about this is that he's so terrible at plotting paybacks. I know I did when I was writing it, I had all these grandiose plans of all these ways that he would just completely knock out of the park. So that is like my favorite but completely frustrating thing when I wrote it, was that I had these grandiose plans for him to write all of these ridiculous things that she would end up doing on stage because he wrote that in for his revenge. And instead, he's such a different guy than what I had planned. Like, the characters took lives of their own and just took me on an adventure. And it's so fitting. Like, he's so likable for the way that it's handled, that I just really love him for it.
Because it's my favorite meal, I'm going to make this my token final question for every interview. So what is your dessert?
Favorite dessert? You know what? I would say, oh, that's so hard. Okay, so I think my favorite off the top of my head would be Thai food is my favorite. And there's this sticky rice with mangoes and like crushed peanuts and the sauce. I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's by far my favorite. And I've tried to make it on my own at home, and I can't. So if you're ever eating Thai food and you see it as a dessert, know that it's just amazing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for the tip. I'm going to have to look into that the next Thai restaurant I go to.
Oh, sure. What's yours?
I actually don't have one in town. I have to find one in the city closest to us. We don't have a Thai restaurant, but we have Indian, and I think we have a Chinese buffet, a Chinese place.
Oh,
but I'm not.
Oh my goodness, you sound just like me. We have Chinese, and we now have a brand new Indian restaurant, which has been so good. It's been so, like, in my little town, we essentially have Domino's,
Me too.
And that's kind of where you're limited. And yes, and once I was so excited when the Indian restaurant came that I ordered it like 3 times in like 1 or 2 weeks. And I called one time, and they were like writing the order down. I'd never seen them. I just called the orders and I'll pick them up, and they would be like, yes, yes, yes. Okay, what's your name? And I said, Melissa Ferguson. And he goes, hello, I know you. And I was like, oh my gosh, how to know that you're like eating way too much Indian food is you just say your name.
They're like, yeah, you're right here.
Yeah, for real. So that's cool. You were a journalist, or are you a journalist now?
No, I actually retired from it. I had worked my way up to being editor of a newspaper, and then COVID hit.
Oh,
there was a big spike in, I guess, racial tension in the area where we were.
Oh no.
So it got super bad for me. And I was like the only colored person in my town, only visible minority.
Yeah. What town were you in, or are you in?
So I was in Cobden, Ontario, and now thankfully I'm in Arnprior, Ontario, where my husband was born and raised.
Okay.
And when he was younger, it was a predominantly white area, but now there's a lot more visible minorities moving to the area.
Yeah.
So I feel a little less alone now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally okay. I was one of those people who was born and raised in the city, grew up in like Ottawa, then Toronto. I was there for Toronto for like 12 years doing school. And then my dad lived in this area. So when I moved here, I was just like, Daddy, where do you live? Because my mom's Trinidadian and my dad's the Irish Canadian.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was an area that he really fit into and stuff, and reminded him of when he grew up. And then I ended up meeting my husband, and when I got a job at the local brewery.
Oh, fun.
Right?
Awesome. Yeah.
So it was really like fortuitous. And then it gave us the opportunity to go out and live in the BC mountains and things like that. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't all bad.
Yeah. Yeah. We're in the mountains now, and I really, really like it. It's a lot better than when we were in the city.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Even just the clean air difference.
Yeah, I know. I really love cities. I especially love that it makes it easy for cooking. I don't love cooking all the time. And but yes, I definitely have been in the big cities where it's just like, wow, I don't know how I just feel like it's very unhealthy. It's got to be. So,
Right. And
yeah.
speaking actually that you brought up cooking, that was one of the things that I had to get used to. I remember asking my husband the first time, I was like, I'm really hungry. Like, where can I order food from? He's like, it's 11 o'clock. I was like,
Oh
so
my gosh.
he was like, everything closed at like 8. I was like, but how
Yeah,
do people eat? He's like, they cook their own food. I was like, what?
I know. I know. I even just made a little point about that in my new book. I'm editing up a book today that will come out in April, and I made a point about that because she's in LA.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So,
You must be talking about how to plot a payback.
yeah, yeah.
I'm super excited for it. It's already on my Goodreads.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I really like it. I'm in the season where it's such a roller coaster, the ups and downs, and it's very cliche. I even apologize when I call my editor and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm a terrible writer and this book is horrible and there's no hope and I've never done it. And she's like, okay, this too shall pass. Remember? So I'm in that moment right now and I have to turn it in, but hopefully I'll crawl back up from the doomsday feelings.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure it's momentary.
I hope so. Yes, it tends to be.
Right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, even with the babysitter being sick. I hope she feels better.
I know. I hope so too. I've literally raced down my Evie's crying, and I've ran down to the mailbox to hope that she'll be temporarily distracted. And my 8-year-old is now carrying her down toward me down the hill. So my time is limited.
I was going to say that's hysterical. You're running out of time at the perfect time.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, I will let you go back to being supermom.
Oh no, you're very sweet. I'm gonna go back to the chaos of my house though, and it was nice talking to you. What was your favorite dessert?
My favorite dessert? Oh my goodness. I don't think I have just one, but I love a good cake.
Oh yeah, me too. There's actually this, if you decide you want a good chocolate cake recipe, Oh She Glows has this fabulous one. It's one of my favorite recipe books.
Ooh, I'm gonna look.
Oh no, and the baby's found me. Oh yeah, Oh She Glows. Oh She Glows is my favorite recipe book of all time.
Perfect. I'm looking into that. Thank you so much for the tip.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Everyone go read How to Plot Payback and Oh She Glows.
Perfect. And famous for a living.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And famous for, that's right. How to Plot Payback isn't even out.
Add how to plot a payback. How to plot a payback to our Goodreads.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great.
Oh, of course. And we can add all the rest of them too. Meet Me in the Margins, Cul-de-Sac War. There's
Despite me being a terrible promoter of my first 2 books, sure.
It's okay. That's what we'll help you with.
I know. Well, I appreciate it. And I will say, for anyone who's interested, my socials are our friendly farmhouse. All right. Well, thank you so much. And it was great talking to you. And I'm going to go give this kid a Wawa because you can probably hear her going, Wawa.
All right. That sounds like a plan. You get her a Wawa.
You have a good day.
Thank you. You too. And thank you so much again. You can find Melissa's books via your favorite book retailer, online and in store. You can learn more about Melissa, her work, and insanely beautiful country life online at melissaferguson.com. That's MELISSAFERGUSON.com. Or you can find her on socials. Follow her on Instagram like I do at MELISSAFERGUSONAUTHOR. or on TikTok at Melissa Ferguson Life, Life. Sign up for her newsletter too. Thanks for joining me on another episode of a Bookish Podcast. Don't forget to pretty please sign up for the newsletter. You can just send me a message giving me permission to add you to the email list. It's that easy, because no one likes complicated. Listeners, can you believe August is almost over? Next week, we're going to get into what books got read this month, September releases we're looking forward to, and recapping some of our favorite author moments. DM me or email me to have your say. There's also the polls that you can fill out below. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and thank you so much again for listening. Let me know what you're up to this weekend. Let me know what you're up to next week. Let me know what books you're reading. I want to know, you guys. This weekend is going to be pretty exciting for me. My sister has a birthday coming up tomorrow. My husband's cousin and one of my closest friends is having a vow renewal tomorrow evening. Sunday is a church day and we're checking out the town market again. It's just all around going to be so much fun. And then it's back to work, of course. But again, so blessed to be able to do this. And thank you to all of you for tuning in and listening and helping to make this possible. So again, I hope you all get to eat some dessert. I hope you all get to read some books. And I hope you all get to relax at some point within the next 7 days.